You know that feeling when you give so much of yourself to someone, when you try to show them how much they mean to you, but somehow the more effort you pour in, the more distant they feel. It's like no matter how hard you try to create closeness, the other person pulls away. You're left asking yourself, what am I doing wrong? Why does it feel like love slips away the moment I try to hold on to it? That quiet ache in your chest, the one that comes from wanting to be chosen without having to beg for it, has a way of making you feel small. And maybe you've wondered if closeness always has to come at the cost of your dignity. But here's the truth you've probably never been told. Real emotional closeness is never built through chasing. It's not about proving your worth. It's about creating a space where connection feels natural, safe, and irresistible. And if you've been caught in the exhausting cycle of giving more, texting first, planning everything, overthinking every silence, then what you've really been doing is trying to control love instead of letting it grow. That's why it keeps slipping through your fingers. What you crave is intimacy that feels mutual, where the other person leans in, not because you've tugged at them, but because something about you draws them in effortlessly, and that is possible. You don't have to keep chasing, because there is a way to build closeness that actually deepens love instead of scaring it away. You just haven't been shown how yet. Think about it. When you chase, you're signaling that the other person holds the power, that they get to decide whether or not you're enough. But what happens when you stop chasing? At first it feels terrifying, doesn't it? Like if you pull back, they'll leave for good. But what really happens is this. The energy shifts. The closeness that once felt forced suddenly has room to breathe. The other person feels your presence, not your pressure. And that's the difference that changes everything. The mistake so many people make is confusing intensity with intimacy. You've probably been there, those fast, fiery beginnings where you talk for hours, share everything, and feel like you've finally found someone who understands you. But then, almost without warning, the energy changes. They stop replying as quickly. They seem distracted. You feel the panic rise in your chest, and before you know it, you're scrambling to get back the closeness you thought you had. The harder you push, the faster they slip away, and you're left with that sinking feeling that maybe you weren't enough. But here's the secret. It was never about you not being enough. It was about how closeness was being built. When intimacy is forced, it can't sustain itself. Real emotional closeness is slow, steady, and rooted in trust. It's built not by chasing someone down, but by creating an emotional rhythm where both people feel safe enough to come forward on their own. And when you learn how to create that rhythm, everything changes. The neediness fades, the panic disappears. You stop feeling like you're clinging, and instead you become the kind of person others want to hold close. Imagine for a moment what it would feel like to have someone lean into you, not because you begged for their attention, but because they felt drawn to you, because being with you felt peaceful, effortless, magnetic. Imagine them reaching out first, missing you when you're not there, cherishing the moments you share without you ever having to demand it. That's not a fantasy. That's what happens when you stop chasing and start building closeness the right way. The shift begins inside you. When you chase, you're operating from fear. The fear of being forgotten, the fear of being left behind, the fear that if you don't try harder, you'll lose them. But fear can't create closeness. It only creates pressure. And pressure is the fastest way to make someone pull away. What creates closeness is presence. It's the quiet confidence that says, I don't need to grab at you, because I trust that if we're meant to connect, you'll want to be here. That energy is magnetic. It draws people in without you having to do all the work. So the first step is noticing your patterns. How do you usually react when you feel distance growing between you and someone you care about? Do you send more messages? Do you try to fix the problem by over-explaining, apologizing, or doing more than your share? Or do you withdraw completely, hoping they'll chase you back? Neither extreme works because both are born out of fear. One smothers, the other creates coldness. But there is a middle ground, the sweet spot, where closeness is built naturally. And that sweet spot comes from your ability to hold space, to stay present, calm, and secure, even when the other person takes a step back. To resist the urge to chase and instead let them feel the absence of your presence. Because it's only in that space that they realize the value of what they stand to lose. Emotional closeness isn't about constant contact. It's about meaningful connection. And when you understand that, you stop filling the silence with desperate attempts, and you start filling it with confidence. Here's something powerful most people never realize. Closeness is built in the moments in between. Not in the intensity of constant texting, not in the dramatic confessions, not in the endless overthinking, but in the way someone feels when you're not around. Do they feel relief? Or do they feel your absence in a way that makes them want to lean back toward you? That is what determines whether intimacy deepens or dies. And the way to create that feeling isn't through chasing, but through being the kind of person whose presence naturally lingers. This is where your focus has to shift. Instead of thinking, how can I make them closer to me? You begin asking, how can I become someone whose presence creates closeness effortlessly? That's the mindset that frees you from chasing. Because once you understand how to create that magnetic presence, you'll never feel the need to run after anyone again. And I know that part of you has been searching for this answer for a long time. You've tried giving more, being more available, showing more love, but somehow it hasn't worked. And maybe it's left you doubting whether you're even worthy of closeness at all. But listen carefully. You are not hard to love. You are not too much. You are not unworthy. What you've been missing isn't worth. It's strategy. You've been trying to build connection the hard way, when in reality, closeness grows strongest when you stop chasing and start allowing. Because when you stop chasing, you start seeing. You see whether the other person is willing to meet you halfway. You see whether they value your presence without you forcing it. And you see the truth of whether this connection was ever as strong as you hoped it was. That clarity is powerful, because it saves you from wasting yourself on someone who is never ready for the closeness you deserve. And here's the most beautiful part. Once you step into that clarity, the closeness you've been craving finally has room to arrive. Not the exhausting kind where you're running after someone's affection. Doesn't build closeness, it drains it. It strips away your dignity and replaces it with desperation. And when someone feels desperation coming from you, they don't see it as love, they see it as pressure, and pressure makes people pull back. That's why the harder you try, the emptier you end up feeling. But when you flip the script, when you stop pouring your energy into chasing and instead pour it into being grounded, present, and steady, everything begins to shift. The other person no longer feels like they're being cornered into closeness. Instead, they feel like closeness with you is a choice. And that's exactly what makes it so powerful. Because when someone chooses you without you forcing their hand, the connection deepens naturally. It becomes real. It becomes mutual. And that is the closeness you've been searching for. Think about the people you've been most drawn to in your life. Was it the ones who chased you relentlessly, who smothered you with attention, who never gave you space to breathe? Or was it the ones who carried themselves with a quiet confidence, who gave you room to come closer without begging for it, who made you feel safe enough to lean in at your own pace? That pull you felt wasn't created by chasing. It was created by presence, by energy, by the unspoken confidence that said, I don't need to grab you to know that I'm valuable. That's the kind of presence you need to cultivate in yourself if you want emotional closeness that lasts. Because the truth is, closeness isn't built through effort alone. It's built through balance. It's built through giving and receiving, through leaning in and leaning back, through allowing the natural rhythm of intimacy to unfold without trying to control it. And when you understand that rhythm, you stop falling into the trap of doing too much. Here's the danger of chasing. It teaches the other person that they don't need to invest. If you're always the one initiating, planning, reaching out, and holding things together, then you're silently telling them that their effort isn't required. And over time, that creates imbalance. They grow comfortable in giving you less, because you've already shown you'll carry the weight of the relationship on your shoulders, and before long you're left with a hollow kind of closeness, a closeness that exists only because you're carrying both sides of it. But when you stop chasing, the dynamic shifts. The other person suddenly feels the absence of your constant effort. They notice the silence where your messages used to flood in. They notice the gap where you used to overextend. And in that space, something powerful happens. They're given the opportunity to choose, to step up, to invest, to show you that they actually value the connection, not just the comfort of being pursued. That's how true closeness is built, not through your constant chasing, but through their willingness to meet you halfway. And the only way you can discover that willingness is by giving them space to show it. That space may feel terrifying at first. It may stir up your fear of being abandoned. But what you'll find is that the right person doesn't disappear when you stop chasing. The right person notices, and they move closer. They don't need to be convinced to value you. They want, and here's the thing you need to understand. Building closeness without chasing doesn't mean you stop giving. It doesn't mean you turn cold, play games, or shut yourself off emotionally. No, real intimacy comes from showing warmth, care, and affection, but doing it in a way that doesn't compromise your self-respect. It's about giving in balance, not in desperation. It's about showing someone that you want connection, but never at the cost of your dignity. This is where boundaries come in. Boundaries aren't walls that block love. They're the structure that allows love to thrive. When you have clear boundaries, you show someone how to treat you. You teach them that closeness with you is a privilege, not a guarantee. And that is what makes your presence valuable. Because people don't respect what they don't have to earn. If closeness with you is handed out freely, without balance, it loses its meaning. But when someone sees that your time, energy, and affection are precious, they begin to cherish them. And in that cherishing, closeness grows naturally. Ask yourself honestly, have you been giving away closeness too easily? Have you been offering your emotional energy without requiring anything in return? Have you been making it too simple for someone to enjoy the benefits of you, without them ever needing to show up fully? If so, then you've been training them to take you for granted. But the moment you step back, the moment you stop chasing, the moment you start holding your boundaries, that training begins to undo itself. The dynamic recalibrates, and they begin to realize that closeness with you is something they need to invest in, not something they can coast through. And here's what's so powerful about this shift. It doesn't just change how they treat you. It changes how you see yourself. Because every time you choose not to chase, you're choosing to affirm your own worth. You're saying, I don't need to beg for love. I don't need to prove myself to be chosen. I am already worthy of being cherished. That self-respect radiates from you, and it makes you magnetic. It makes people want to lean into you, because they can feel that you're not operating from fear, you're operating from confidence. That confidence is what makes closeness sustainable. Because let's face it, anyone can fake intimacy at the beginning. Anyone can say the right words, send the sweet messages, and play the part. But what truly builds lasting closeness is consistency. And consistency only shows up when both people are invested, when both people are contributing, when both people feel safe and seen. And that's only possible when you stop carrying the weight alone. When you stop chasing, you stop settling for one-sided intimacy. You create the conditions where mutual closeness can actually grow. And yes, that means you might lose people along the way. Some will fade when you stop feeding them with endless effort. And as painful as that is, it's also the greatest gift, because their absence shows you the truth. They were never truly invested, and wouldn't you rather know that now than keep wasting your love on someone who only stayed because you were chasing them? The ones who stay when you stop chasing, the ones who step up, who move closer, who show you through their actions that they want this as much as you do. Those are the people worth your heart, and with them, closeness becomes effortless. It doesn't feel like pulling teeth. It doesn't feel like running a marathon just to keep their attention. It feels mutual. It feels balanced. It feels real. And isn't that what you've been craving all along? Not just someone to stand next to you, but someone who actually meets you there. Not just a connection. Appears the moment you stop chasing, then it was never truly closeness. It was dependency, and dependency masquerading as intimacy will always leave you feeling empty. You don't want dependency. You want something stronger. You want that sense of being seen for who you are, not for how much you give. You want to feel safe leaning on someone, knowing they can lean on you too. You want a connection where silence isn't a threat, but a comfort, where the pauses between words feel as intimate as the words themselves. And the beautiful truth is, you can have that. But it only comes when you stop trying to drag someone into closeness, and instead create an environment where closeness naturally rises between you. How do you do that? You start by becoming deeply attuned to your own emotion. When you feel that panic rise up, the urge to send another message, the itch to demand reassurance, the need to prove your value, you learn to pause, to sit with that discomfort instead of reacting to it. Because in that pause, you teach yourself something life-changing, that your worth isn't dependent on their response. You are already whole, already valuable, already enough, even if they don't validate it in that moment. That inner stability is magnetic. People can feel it. They can sense when you're not clinging to them for validation, and that makes them feel safer with you, because they're no longer burdened with the responsibility of keeping you afloat emotionally. Instead, they get to enjoy you. They get to relax with you. They get to connect with you in a way that feels light and genuine. And it's in that space of emotional safety that true closeness blooms. Closeness doesn't come from intensity, it comes from consistency. It's not about how many hours you talk at the start or how passionately you try to prove your feelings. It's about whether someone feels like they can count on you over time and whether you can count on them. It's about showing up authentically, not anxious, and that's why chasing fails. It creates intensity without stability. It burns bright for a moment, but then fizzles out. But when you stop chasing and start showing up grounded in your worth, you build the kind of consistency that makes closeness feel safe, lasting, and real. Picture this, you're with someone, and instead of rushing to fill every silence with words or actions, you let the silence sit. You're comfortable in it. You don't feel the urge to prove yourself. You just allow the moment to be what it is. Do you know how rare that is? How magnetic it feels to be with someone who doesn't pressure the connection, but simply allows it. That's when the other person leans in. Not because you begged them to, but because your presence invites it. This is why your energy matters more than your effort. You could send 100 texts, plan endless dates, pour out your heart every chance you get. But if the energy behind it is fear, if it's rooted in desperation, the other person will feel it. They may not be able to put it into words, but they'll sense that something feels heavy, and heaviness pushes people away. But when your energy is grounded, when it says, I'm here, I'm present, but I don't need to chase, that's when they feel drawn to you. Because nothing feels safer than someone who isn't trying to control the connection, but simply allowing it to unfold. And here's something else you need to remember. Closeness doesn't grow only in the moments you're together, it grows in the moments you're apart. When they leave your presence, what do they feel? Do they feel drained, overwhelmed, pressured? Or do they feel peaceful, curious, wanting more? That aftertaste you leave behind is what determines whether they lean in again. And the only way to leave behind a feeling that draws them closer is by being secure enough to not chase, by letting your presence speak for itself instead of trying to force its impact. You've probably had moments in your life where someone surprised you by investing more when you invested less. Think about that. Those times when you pulled back just slightly, and suddenly they were the one reaching out, the one planning, the one making sure you felt cared for. That wasn't an accident. That was proof of the principle. When you stop chasing, you give space for the other person to step forward. And the right people will. And when they do, that's when real closeness begins to build. Because now it's not just you pouring in, it's both of you. It's balanced, it's reciprocal. And that balance creates trust. You begin to trust that they'll show up for you, not just when you're holding everything together, but even when you step back. They begin to trust that you're not going to smother them, that you can give them space without falling apart. That mutual trust is the foundation of emotional intimacy. This is the closeness you've been craving, the kind that doesn't leave you feeling empty or anxious, but instead makes you feel secure and alive. And once you taste it, you'll never want to go back to the exhausting cycle of chasing again. Because the truth is, you don't need to chase anyone. The right closeness will never require you to run after it. The right closeness will meet you where you are, will grow with you, will lean into you willingly. And the moment you embrace that truth, you free yourself. You stop living in fear of being abandoned, and you start living in the confidence of knowing that real intimacy is possible without sacrificing your self-respect. And when you show up that way with grounded presence, clear boundaries, and an energy that says, I don't need to chase, you become the kind of person who draws closeness without effort. People feel it. They're drawn to it. They want to be near you not because you convince them, but because being with you feels like home. And this is where everything changes for you. Because once you realize you don't have to chase to create closeness, you finally step out of the exhausting cycle that's been stealing your peace for so long. You stop giving away all your power to someone else's attention. You stop living in the fear of silence, in the panic of waiting for a reply, in the desperation of proving your worth. You begin to understand that closeness is not something you can force. It's something you invite. And the invitation is strongest when it comes from a place of confidence, not fear. When you're secure enough to say, I value connection, but I value myself too much to chase it. That is when your energy transforms. People can feel it the moment they're around. You stop being the one who clings, and you become the one who anchors. You stop being the one who scrambles, and you become the one who steadies. And there's nothing more magnetic than that. Think about the relationships you've admired from afar, the ones that felt effortless, mutual, and safe. They didn't get there by one person chasing while the other ran. They got there because both people leaned in naturally. Both people chose each other. Both people built closeness through trust, consistency, and presence. That's the model you need to follow. And when you do, you'll never again waste yourself on someone who only stayed because you were holding everything together. Because real closeness doesn't demand you lose yourself. It doesn't ask you to shrink, to beg, to bend until you break. Real closeness expands you. It makes you feel more alive, more secure, more at peace in your own skin. It brings out your best, not your worth. And the only way to experience that kind of intimacy is by refusing to chase what isn't meeting you halfway. And yes, that takes courage. It takes courage to step back when your instincts are screaming to run forward. It takes courage to hold space instead of filling it with desperate effort. It takes courage to believe that if someone is right for you, they'll step closer on their own. But that courage is what separates the fleeting connections from the lasting ones. That courage is what protects your heart until it's received by someone who truly values it. When you live this way, something incredible happens. You stop settling. You stop mistaking intensity for intimacy. You stop believing that love has to feel like a battle. Instead, you start recognizing the quiet signs of real closeness, the consistency of someone showing up, the comfort of silence that doesn't feel threatening, the balance of give and take. You begin to trust that love doesn't have to hurt to be real, and you stop pouring yourself into people who only come closer when you're chasing them. You deserve so much more than that. You deserve a closeness that feels safe. You deserve someone who values your presence without needing to be convinced of it. You deserve intimacy that grows because it's chosen, not because it's begged for. And the moment you stop chasing, you create the conditions for that kind of love to finally arrive. So the next time you feel that urge rising, the urge to overextend, to overgive, to prove your worth, pause. Remind yourself of the truth. Love that's real doesn't need to be chased. Connection that's genuine doesn't disappear the moment you step back. An intimacy that lasts is built by two people meeting in the middle, not by one person running toward the other while they stand still. Your power lies in your presence. Your power lies in your ability to give without losing yourself, to care without clinging, to love without begging. That is the energy that builds closeness without pressure. That is the energy that draws people toward you naturally. And that is the energy that will protect your heart until it's received by someone who knows exactly how valuable it is. So hold on to that truth. Let it sink deep into you. You never have to chase love to keep it. If it's real, it will meet you half. If it's right, it will grow stronger the more you trust yourself to stop running after it. And if it's meant for you, it will stay, not because you begged it to, but because closeness with you feels too rare, too safe, too beautiful to ever let go. That's how you build emotional closeness without chasing. Not through fear, not through pressure, but through the steady confidence of knowing your worth. Through the courage to let someone step forward on their own. Through the patience to allow love to breathe, grow, and root itself deep. That's the closeness you've been waiting for. And the moment you choose yourself first, it becomes yours.